Hello, everyone. You've tuned in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance. Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I want to thank their continued support of the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I want to thank also Tom Trial for putting us on the ISP YouTube site each and every week. Tom is waving to me behind the scenes. Never see Tom. He's never a man to be in front of the scenes, but he does a lot of work behind the scenes. So make sure that you go to our ISP YouTube site and see what Tom has available on that site. With me today is Master Conservation Officer John Gano. John, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Rich. It's
I
my
appreciate
pleasure.
you being here. And John primary patrols Hamilton County, is that right?
Right, yeah, and primarily Geist and Morse reservoirs there.
So how long have you been with the Department of Natural
I'm in my 23rd year now.
Really? So did you start out in Hamilton County?
I started off in Marion County my first couple of years, and then I transferred in 1998 to Hamilton County. Been
Are
there
you
ever since.
Originally from Indiana?
I grew up in Carmel, graduated from Carmel High School, yep.
So was this something that John Gano knew he wanted to do from a long time back, or how did you become?
No, I actually fell into it by accident. I was looking for a fisheries position, and they weren't hiring at the time, and they were hiring some conservation officers, and I got recruited by a couple officers in District 6, and here I am 23 years later.
Wow, that's good. Good career, and I'm sure you're enjoying it. You're an outdoor guy?
Absolutely. Love to hunt and fish and do anything outdoors. Yeah.
Okay. That kind of goes along with your job description.
Yeah, it's pretty critical that you have the interest and the background to have the job. It kind of goes hand in hand. Yeah.
So are you primarily, how does your public information office work there? Do you guys have that separate, or how does that work out?
Well, it's just an extra duty or responsibility that we have. We don't have dedicated full-time public information officers. Each district has two public information officers, and it's just a specialty for us. We do the ordinary field work as well.
So they find the guys that like to talk, like to go out and do things.
I guess I was a natural because I was already doing a lot of spots on with the local media, Indianapolis. I'm close to Indianapolis, of course, and a lot of interest in boating safety on Geist and Morse reservoirs with the local media. So I kind of fell into it, I guess you could say, because of that.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because the summer months finally have broken. I know April was extremely cold. But then May was one of the hottest Mays that we've had in years here in Indiana. So I'm sure that you guys have seen the boaters come out on Geist and Morse.
Oh, yeah. It's been dry, too. The weather's, been good. So, yeah, the last couple of weeks, the reservoirs have been really busy.
So do you primarily patrol Geist or Morse?
Geist and Morse, I about 50-50. There's two officers in Hamilton County, and we can't be two places at once. Our schedules are offset, so we actually pull in officers from the surrounding counties to work the reservoir as well.
And what do you guys utilize when you're out there on patrol?
We have a patrol boat. I have the boat that's stationed on Geist Reservoir assigned to me. It's it's a fairly large center console patrol boat. Well marked. It's got a spotlight up top. The red and blue lights, and we've got dive capability out of that boat as well. So it's a good platform for us. Pretty recognizable as a law enforcement boat.
Now, do you guys have personal watercrafts also?
Yeah, we do work off of those, not as much as we used to. We still have a few around. We have to have a support boat out when we're working on those for obvious reasons, for transport.
Kind of like this with the motorcycles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we do work some smaller boats as well, flat bottoms and smaller boats, especially on the rivers. Can't get a large patrol boat out on a lot of the moving waterways that we have.
Right. Yeah.
So we work out of a lot of different varieties of boats, actually.
So, tell us a little bit about what you guys look for when you're out there patrolling, and what the public needs to know about when they're out there on the boat.
Our primary focus, first and foremost, is always going to be safety. We're looking for safety violations, dangerous operation, for example. We do have problems, as you can imagine, with people behind the wheel that are drinking too much. So whenever we're on a stop, we focus on the operator, make sure they're in a proper condition to be operating, they're not impaired. And then obviously we're looking for other things, registration violations, safety equipment in the boats that might be missing, like life jackets and things like that as well.
An operator of a boat, obviously, it's just like driving a car. You can't be over the limit of that. Can there be open containers on the boat?
Yeah, there's not an open container law for motorboats in Indiana. So even the driver can be drinking beer in hand. That's not grounds for us to stop that individual. We have to have a violation for a stop, something other than that. But obviously, on any stop we make for those things, we're going to contact the driver. And if it's apparent that they're in a condition where they shouldn't be driving, obviously we're going to go through sobriety testing and go from there.
Yeah, that's the obvious. That's the thing that are you finding a lot of other related impairments also besides alcohol?
Yeah, it's actually a lot more common nowadays that we find people are impaired on different kinds of drugs as well. A lot more common that we're doing blood draws on people at the jail.
Yeah.
We get somebody that's impaired behind the wheel, and we give them a portable breath test, and we're getting zeros on that. Pretty obvious there's something else that's impairing them. So, it's not that infrequent that we're getting search warrants for blood draws and things like that to see what other kind of drugs might be in their system.
What we're finding on the road too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Both places, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, if a person is out on a boat, I think you probably think the number one safety thing is, like for us, seatbelts, but it's got to be life vests.
Yeah, well, the thing that makes boating extremely dangerous is you don't have the safety equipment that you have in a motor vehicle. You don't have a seatbelt, you don't have an airbag, nothing to keep you in the boat if you're in a crash. And then you're going to end up in the water most likely. If you're not wearing a life jacket, bad things happen from there. So it's not that surprising that 85% of our boating fatalities, drowning is the cause of death. So life jacket usage, wearing your life jackets is critical.
What are some examples of life jackets that you got there with you today?
Well, the basic requirements in Indiana are one wearable for any watercraft, whether it's motorized or not. You have to have one wearable device for each person on board the watercraft.
No matter the age or size or anything?
It doesn't make any difference. Now, we don't require people, except for personal watercraft in Indiana, to be wearing these while they're in the boat or being towed, but we certainly recommend it. Strongly recommend it in certain cases. Children under the age of 12, for example, non-swimmers or weak swimmers should always have a life jacket on. If you're out in rough conditions or on moving water where there's current, certainly we recommend in those cases you always be wearing a life jacket. But they have to be Coast Guard approved, and some devices, if you go to the store to purchase, won't have the Coast Guard label on them, the label that I'm showing here. You need to make sure if this is being used for boating purposes that you have that Coast Guard label on there.
And that tells also what sizes and everything.
Yeah, and it's based on the weight of the person, so it has a certain amount of flotation built in. This one, for example, is rated up to 80 pounds. Okay. So somebody my size, obviously, even if I could get it on, it wouldn't have enough flotation for somebody that's an adult. This is a child-size life jacket. It's a wearable device. Certainly works for boating scenarios. Some things you could pick up at the store that don't have a label on them are called swimming aids. They're appropriate for the pool, but they're not approved for boating.
And I've seen that too, is like little kids have those swimmy things on too. Those aren't going to do it.
No, we've had people give us swim noodles on stops and things that certainly aren't appropriate. Good wearable device. And the most important thing there as well is make sure they're readily accessible. Yeah. And what that means in layman's terms is that you know where they are and you can get to them in a hurry, because you're not going to have much time to get a device if you're in an accident. Yeah.
It's kind of like we tell people the seatbelt, because you're not going to have time to put it on, so have it on.
Yeah, and it can only work for you if you're wearing it.
Yeah. What's the other one that you...
This is the other requirement for boats 16 feet and larger in Indiana or longer. This is a throwable device in contrast to the wearable. The most common type you'll see is similar to this, is a sea cushion with the straps on the side. Again, it's got a Coast Guard label on it, so you know it's approved for boating. Make sure you're looking for that. Ring buoys, the type of buoys or devices that you see around swimming pools, are also approved for boating. You have to have just one of those on board. And that's in case somebody were to fall overboard or end up in the water. You've got something that you can throw to them out of the boat. And this should be totally accessible at all times, laying out where somebody can grab it in an instant.
And toss it out to somebody.
Right.
Is there any limit onto the time that those are usable, or do they have an expiration?
Yeah, they don't have an expiration date on them, but if they're stored in a compartment that has water in it, for example, or they're exposed to the sun, and they can get damaged. So we do have people that on occasion hand us devices that are water soaked, that don't have the flotation anymore, and or are not in a working condition. So it is important that you keep your life jackets in a dry compartment, out of the sun, and make sure that you're checking them each season to make sure they're appropriate.
Yeah, and your straps, I'm sure you want to check those and make sure they're operating correctly.
Absolutely, yes.
What's some of the other stuff you got there, John?
Well, one of the things that we want to make sure people are doing when they operate personal watercraft, an example of that kind of machine would be a jet ski, wave runners. They're very common nowadays. One of the basic requirements.
You can pull people with those anymore.
Yeah,
can't you?
yeah, and that's not unlawful as long as you have a spotter on the back, that's observing the person being towed. That's another requirement for boating. But one of the issues we've had with people on personal watercraft is they are required to wear a safety lanyard, which is what I have in my hands here. The one end either goes on a wrist strap around your wrist, or you can buckle it or attach it to your life vest if you're the operator. The other end here goes into what's called a kill switch, or an engine shutoff switch.
Okay.
That way, if you fall off the machine as the operator, and the one thing that's different for these kind of boats is they're designed for people to be thrown off potentially in the water. At least if the operator comes off the machine, this will disengage the motor so the machine doesn't continue to operate at speed down the lake. We've had people that were not wearing their lanyard have the machine continue on at speed. Could hit another boat, a swimmer in the water, end up on shore, things like that. Bad things can happen. Or it can circle back towards the operator in the water. And we've had some accidents happen that way as well. So it is a serious requirement that the operator be wearing this at all times.
So that's designed in the personal watercraft itself that just snaps out whenever they fall off there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the lanyard comes with the person in the water, and it disengages the motor. Otherwise, the motor will continue to run at speed. You basically have a runaway machine going down the lake.
Are they in the same category as a boat, everything?
Yeah, the other special requirements, all the other requirements that apply to boats, registration and everything else apply to personal watercraft. There are just some special requirements, such as the lanyard being worn at all times. The other requirement that's very critical if you're operating these machines is that everybody on board or being towed has to wear a life jacket at all times. That's a decision in a normal boating scenario. It's a requirement for personal watercraft.
They've got to have it on.
Absolutely.
Is there any age requirements on those?
Yeah, anything over 10 horsepower in Indiana, the minimum age is 15 with a boater safety certification. You have to take a 6-hour boater safety course, which we offer online or in person. We actually teach it in a lot of local school systems. Okay. In my county, we teach all the kids at Noblesville and Hamilton Heights school systems that program in 8th grade. And those are a lot of kids on Morse Reservoir, and they're automatically going to be certified through the school system there. For other people, it's easily accessible online on our website.
Do they get something that they carry with them then?
Yeah, they have a complete boat certification card that they would carry, and then the other requirement is that they have a state identification card or a photo ID to go along with that, and that allows them to operate at 15. Otherwise, you would normally have to wait till you're 16 and a half and properly licensed. Okay. And you do have to have a valid driver's license in Indiana to be able to operate a boat. Okay. Can't be suspended.
Okay. Just like driving a car.
Absolutely.
About 2 minutes and a half. Show me what else you got.
Well, we were talking about alcohol use on the water. Right. Obviously, one of the differences between boating and working impaired operators on the roadway is obviously we have to go through a different battery of tests. Everything we do as far as sobriety testing is concerned is done with the operator in a seated position. Obviously, we can't do some of the other tests like a
sobriety test out there.
I can't do a one leg stand in a boat that's rocking in waves. So we do everything in a seated position. We're looking for impairment there. A lot of it's cognitive. Have people do a lot of testing with their hands, for example. But it's all in a seated position where the person's stable. Then we may deliver that person to shore and do the other test once they get their sea legs to them in a parking lot at the marina, for example. But the law on boating while intoxicated in Indiana, there's 2 rules. First off, you can't boat while you're impaired, and that's where the sobriety testing comes in. The other rule, which is similar to the roadway, is you can't have a blood alcohol level of over 0.08. And one of the things that all our officers have in their patrol boats are held portable breath test machines. So we do, eventually after sobriety testing, if people are failing those tests, we're eventually going to get a blood sample on a portable breath test machine. And that gives us probable cause to take that person to the jail and offer the test there.
About 30 seconds. What's your last item there?
This is a skier down flag, it's called. It's a very good idea if you're towing somebody that the spotter have this in hand. Once somebody falls off or is done skiing and they're in the water and the boat's returning to them, it's a nice idea to have the spotter put this up in the air. It's very visible to other boaters in the area that might be approaching that person in the water, that they can see that this flag's being displayed, and that tells the operator of boats that are close by that they should be looking for somebody in the water. So it's not a requirement, but it's certainly a very good idea. We have a lot of congestion in some of the reservoirs in this area, so it's not uncommon that somebody in the water there might have other boats bearing down on them.
Well, John, we've run out of time. We've talked ourselves out, but thank you so much for coming in here and giving us all this boating safety tips and keeping everybody safe out there this summer.
I appreciate you having us. Thank you very much.
Again, this has been the Indiana State Police Roadshow with DNR Sergeant DNR Gano, John Gano. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.